Welcome to The Explainer. Right off the bat, we are jumping straight into a visceral, graphic novel-style journey through some seriously dark Nietzschean philosophy. We're talking about a grim-dark fable that wrestles with nihilism, the shadow of the Übermensch, and the philological erasure of our human records, all in this dangerous pursuit of absolute perfection. Seriously, if you've ever wondered about the hidden costs of striving for a flawless existence, you are exactly where you need to be.
Our mythic fable actually begins right here, in the jagged, towering ruins of what our source material calls the Cathedral of Stained Glass. Just picture this for a second. Shattered dogmas are lying in pieces all over the floor, and this cold, wild wind of reality is literally howling through the gaps. It's such an evocative setting, right? And it perfectly frames the confrontation we're about to witness. Because this isn't just some empty ruin, it's practically the battleground for the very soul of humanity.
Section 1. The confrontation of the foundational shadows. Okay, let's dive into this. Right in the center of these ruins, two primal forces of the unconscious are about to clash.
So behold our two foundational shadows. On one side, you have the truth-telling monster. He's seated on a desecrated altar, draped in the tattered silk of high priests, and he's this beastly inquisitor of the real, just gripping a rusted hook. Totally intimidating. But then on the other side stands his foil, the gesture of sapphire light. Now this figure is described as the cold, underground twin of the fool. Where the monster is completely brutal and physical, the gesture is this shimmering, shadowy silhouette. It's like a cold, sapphire flame of the unconscious, just dancing through the voids of the ego.
Now, the monster inquisitor operates on what's called a brutal, guttural law. He basically roars that, quote, sovereignty and dirt are proportional. He uses that rusted hook of his to pull back the curtain and expose the hidden reality. His whole argument is that true authority, like true presence in the world, is inextricably tethered to the messiness of existence. The point here is that you absolutely cannot be a sovereign ruler of your own life without getting your hands dirty in the raw, messy reality of being human. It just doesn't work.
And that brings us face to face with the real enemy in our fable, the creed of negation. The source defines this as the conscious mind's incredibly dangerous, Faustian attempt to seek a kind of divinity that is entirely detached from dirt, hunger, and vulnerability. It's this incredibly toxic influence on a society that just becomes obsessed with absolute purity. By trying to negate our flaws and our basic human needs, we don't magically become gods. We actually end up destroying the very foundation of our existence.
Section 2. Sovereignty and Personal Dirt. Let's look a bit closer at how our two guardians view this highly dangerous desire for unburdened emptiness.
And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic between them. The jester tells the monster, "I am the authentic tragedy." See, he's evolved from this joyful dancer into a totally hopeless participant in humanity's descent. He actually views his own rebellion against reality as a failure. So he finally just accepts his descent into the void, recognizing his true purpose. He is the crucial, heavy anchor in our marrow. He is the sapphire brilliance of our personal dirt, our stain of being. And he's the only thing ensuring we never just float away into the meaningless void of absolute perfection, which the text refers to as high time.
But, this begs a really dramatic, terrifying question. What actually happens when humanity completely ignores the jester, buys into the creed of negation, and successfully erases its own stains? Well, to answer that, our source text gives us a few very dark parables about the folks who foolishly chase this absolute perfection.
Section 3. Clockwork Martyr versus Pink Numbness. We're going to examine the two most striking case studies from the text right now. They represent completely different paths of denying human vulnerability, but as you'll see, they lead to the exact same doom.
So first up, we have the Clockwork Martyr from the Halo of Frozen Seconds. In this one, a ruler seeks absolute sovereignty by literally replacing his blood, which, feels the pain of change, with gears of perfect data. He forges this halo of clockhand arrows just to pin down the wind of life to one single perfect moment. And we contrast that with the pink numbness from the bell that tolled zero. Here, in this city of clocks, citizens drink this Redeemer's pink syrup so they can just completely ignore the growling of their bellies. Meanwhile, they're busy polishing this great bell in a tower of mirrors, just waiting to announce their flawless divinity.
But look at the tragic results here. The ruler achieves his apotheosis, sure, but the clockhand sees up. He is totally paralyzed by the exact time he sought to master, ultimately just becoming a smiling corpse. So congratulations, you're an immortal god, but you're also basically just a very expensive paperweight in an empty room. Meanwhile, when the citizen's great bell finally strikes, it doesn't even make a sound. It just releases a cloud of digital decay that turns their entire city into a laboratory of nothingness. In both of these cases, their Faustian fists of control completely and utterly crush the anima, the vital, messy spirit of life.
Which brings us to Section 4, the threat of the ink blot. Let's move to the next part and see how these paths of denial build into the terminal, existential threat of this universe, the Great Noon and the terrifying ink blot.
So consider these three final parables of existential failure. First, the astronomer. He operates as this warped philologist, totally obsessed with mapping absolute data and using black ink to just blot out any hidden stain of human vulnerability in his starry records. Next, the warrior, who literally lets the Inquisitor carve dogmas right into his flesh. And finally, the last man, who spends his time piling up these heavy marble blocks of societal duty. And the results? Well, it's a rotting, windowless void of records for the astronomer, a smiling corpse for the warrior, and a shattered cloud of iron and salt for the last man. It just proves that the relentless pursuit of a totally stain-free existence always ends in static death.
At the dead center of all these tragedies is the ink blot of negation. So what does this actually represent for individual identity? Quite simply, it represents total erasure. By constantly blotting out our texts, our flaws, our doubts, and our hunger, we end up turning the beautiful, messy pulse of being into a completely frozen stasis. The individual is just totally lost, encased in this rotting void of records where time doesn't even move anymore, simply because there is absolutely nothing human left to experience it.
Section 5. The inseparable silhouette. To really synthesize this explainer's core message, we're going to turn to our final grimdark fable, the story of a conqueror who actually thought he could outrun his own shadow.
This is the parable of the shadow of the Übermensch. We follow a last man who is driven by atavism to the stars. He possesses all the outward striving of an overman, but internally, he is fully aligned with that toxic creed of negation, seeking a divinity totally detached from dirt. But here's the catch. When he reaches his peak, his apotheosis shatters. He suddenly realizes that his absolute sovereignty is just a Faustian fist clenched around absolute nothingness. Why? Because in his climb to the top, he intentionally blotted out his own underground twin.
So the crucial point here is perfectly summarized in this really powerful realization from the text. The silhouette is inseparable from the substance, and height is nothing without the dirt. You literally cannot have the light without the shadow. You just cannot achieve true heights of human potential if you completely sever yourself from the messy, grounded reality that gives you your substance in the first place.
And honestly, this is exactly what you should take away from the explainer today. True sovereignty isn't about becoming some flawless, unfeeling machine or drowning out your human needs in pink syrup. It demands embracing the messy pulse of being. It literally requires you to accept your personal dirt, your flaws, and your hunger. Those aren't bugs in the human operating system, guys. They are the very features that anchor you to reality and actually allow you to live an authentic life.
So, I want to leave you with this. If the pursuit of absolute perfection is really nothing more than a static gravestone we build for ourselves while we are still alive, what beautiful, vital stains are you trying to erase from your own life today? I know, it's a heavy question, but it's an absolutely essential one. Keep your anchor heavy and embrace the wild wind of reality.